CallSource. I know we've got some strong folks using. You're never supposed to say utilize. You say use. A lot of people using CallSource. But I think this is a great opportunity to reintroduce CallSource. They have a lot of new, really intriguing features and a totally unique value proposition. So I'm really glad to have Jeff here, and we'll let him take it away.
Perfect.
Thanks, Jeff.
So, is this working? Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Perfect. So, Brady, thank you very much for the introduction. As Brady said, I'm Jeff Troxel. I represent CallSource. Been with CallSource about 6 years. And in that 6 years, I've been working with hearing providers for the last 4. So I've had a really unique and great experience working with you guys. Extremely passionate about working in the hearing healthcare world. Share a little bit about myself. Some of my earliest childhood memories are sitting in a hearing booth, getting my own hearing tested. So I was actually born with perforated eardrums, and over time in my right ear, scar tissue grew, developed a better eardrum out of my right ear. However, in my left ear, it never really formed. So when I was about 13, I went through my last and final surgery, and they grafted skin from my back and created scar tissue in my left ear to create an eardrum. So it makes me really, really happy, very passionate about working with you guys. So I appreciate everything you do, and it's a pleasure. But sharing a little bit about myself, and I don't want to blind myself with the light, I wanted to find out a little bit more about why you got into audiology. So why did you get into it?
I'm actually the attorney.
The attorney, oh, gross. So you love being a part of it, right? You agree? Eric, how about you? Why did you get into it?
I'm the director of my practice.
Man, I'm batting 1,000 here, right?
I'm an audiologist.
Okay.
I got into audiology because I just absolutely love the idea of being able to help people. My younger sister, when she was growing up, had a little bit of a speech impediment. She had a lisp, and I used to work with her when I was 12 years old. I worked with her on the bus every day, trying to get her to say her S's correctly. So then when I had a chance to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I found communication sciences and disorders, and it was speech and audiology. And I just ended up liking the audiology classes better than the speech. So.
Great. Which, going into having my hearing test, being into speech therapy, my last name is Troxel, and I have a hard time with X, T, and S. So I've had difficulty my entire life trying to say my own name. How about you? Why did you get into audiology?
I got into it, I was actually a speechie. And I put off audiology until grad school, and because it was so hard, all the speechies were so afraid of it, and I loved it. I loved the science of it. But the whole reason why I went into speech audiology was I wanted to help people, I wanted to change lives, and I love people. I'm a bit of a people person.
Perfect. Even better. So everybody, it would be safe to say that a lot of folks got into audiology because they wanted to help, right? So one thing that I'm unclear of is inside going through school to get your AUD or your apprenticeship to become a dispenser, how much of that actually falls into business courses? I know we've got business managers here, but when you're actually an audiologist or a provider, is there a lot of classes focused around business in your credentials? No? Okay. I kind of have that feeling. It's something that we want to focus on and take a look at. Inside business and what you guys do is marketing. It's a big part of what you do. And marketing is all about, for you guys, bringing in phone calls and making the phone ring. What I can tell you about CallSource in the last 6 months, we actually tracked and monitored over 260,000 phone calls. And out of that 260,000 phone calls, 80,000, just over 80,000 were actually qualified, bookable prospects. So it's a little bit of a variance, a little bit of difference there, right? There's a whole bunch of other things that fall into that, and we can get into that down the road. What I can tell you, though, is with inside CallSource and the people that are working with us, 79% of those actually converted into appointments. That's a really good number. That's a great number to see. The other side of that coin, though, is I know for the industry itself as a whole, it's actually it's closer to 60%. So why I want to take a look at that is there's always going to be, like I said, two sides of the coin. There's going to be what we see internally, and then what we see throughout the entire industry. Okay? So, moving on, we're going to kind of come back to some of those numbers here in just a little bit. But when we're talking about a partnership with CallSource, we're talking about setting you up for success and making you more successful in your practice. And that's always defined by growth, revenue generation, expansion. You know, it's not really in 2006, 2007 anymore where we're starting to shrink, trying to consolidate, keep your business rolling. Now we're experiencing something, a great thing inside the industry, where you're starting to see growth. People are opening up new practices year by year. The industry as a whole is growing. So it's really great. But the partnership part of working with CallSource is set up, and we want to, again, set you up for success. And how we do this is we define a plan for you. And in any business, any successful business, there's always planning, correct? So it's strategy, it's planning, it's making sure that you guys are very successful. Over probably the last 4 or 5 years themselves, we've actually, through trial and error, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with trial and error, we've been able to figure out exactly how we set up people for success. And we consider it 5 phases. You know, things like setting up the foundation, it's like building a house, laying the concrete, the groundwork, and then keeping the end in mind, keeping number 1. But there's all these different things that you need to do in between to keep you successful and keep you competitive, and that's focusing in on your business. So setting things like metrics and information, using that to your advantage. Fine-tuning. If you have visibility and you understand that information, then you can use that to your advantage and you, again, become more successful in your strategies. So strategies, success, planning, everything like that, it's not possible to do these things without setting milestones and benchmarks for yourself. So in doing so, how do you use the information to reach those benchmarks, to hit those milestones? So appointment setting, marketing is a huge part of that. How do you get the people in the door? Do you have the right marketing in play? Do you have the right appointments being set? You know, the actual revenue generation comes out of those appointments. So having a goal and a benchmark for appointments per month, per day, per week is extremely important and valuable for you. If you don't hit those marks, you need to be able to jump up and then get those appointments later down the road. And in doing so, tying everything together is your front office staff, right? So anybody that answers the phone, raise your hand if you answer the phone. So, right? Yeah. Brady. You guys are, anybody that answers the phone, anybody that qualifies, talks to a patient, you guys are probably the most important people in that office, in my opinion. So developing these plans, these strategies, none of it goes further without having a solid team in place. I'm a football guy, and so I'll use this analogy. Your front office is like your offensive front 7. If they're strong, they're powerful, they're incentivized, and they've got skin in the game, they'll never let a DB behind the line. You're going to be able to be the quarterback back there in the pocket. You're going to have all the time in the world to throw the ball and make a touchdown every time. So these are all parts of developing those strategies and all the little bits and pieces, the milestones. So when I talk about marketing, I'm going to pull back just a little bit and talk about marketing itself. How many of you are familiar with the halo effect inside marketing or know what that means? Let me ask you another question. How many of you think that direct mail does not work? I knew there was going to be a few hands. So something I've seen through kind of being on the travel circuit and being at different shows, is the constant theme that direct mail doesn't work, or the constant theme that certain advertisements don't work. I'm going to throw this out at you real fast. If a direct mail piece goes out and you don't see a call response from it, the natural reaction is it doesn't work, right? What if I were to tell you a lot of those phone calls actually end up going to your website as opposed to a direct response from that direct mail piece? So that's actually defined as the halo effect, or an example of the halo effect. It means what marketing piece is playing off another to create success for yourselves. That's going to end up being that halo effect. Another good example of this is radio or TV. So radio and TV is good. If you put it out late night or in the traffic hours when people are driving to work or driving home from work, they hear your radio ad. You may have your office phone number on there, and you may not see a phone call. You may not see any kind of response come back from that radio ad. But if you have some sort of measurement in place and you see that you've got an additional amount of phone calls coming into your website, you have the halo effect. So it's about measuring, it's about making sure that these things are being touched and reached. You may not see that. You may believe that certain advertising pieces don't work for you. In actuality, they may be performing and outperforming for some of the things that you've done. I've had clients in the past that have come to me and said, Jeff, this isn't working. I don't know what to do. What am I, where should I reallocate that dollar? And digging into it a little bit further, we found that these marketing pieces are actually the driving force inside their business. So putting that in play and putting that as part of your plan and making that success for yourself is being able to measure and monitor for response rates. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to that the initial side that we took a look at, and we were talking about the 79 versus the 60%. Now I want to ask a couple of you, does this seem about right? I know I've seen this happen in the industry, but I want to see if this lines up with some of the practices you have in your office in terms of call response. Do you measure your call response? Yeah. No? Do you market?
She's been saying that we do.
Oh, you do? So what kind of marketing do you do?
We do some advertising in local papers, a little bit of physician marketing, calling on physicians.
Okay.
Our newsletter.
A newsletter?
Yeah.
So how many leads or qualified patients do you usually see come off the newsletter or the local newspaper?
We generally see an increase in phone calls after our newsletter, but we don't, it's hard to track.
Hard to track? Why is it, so what's the reason for it being hard to track?
I think a lot of it's the halo effect. People, often when I see patients, they'll say, well, I got your newsletter, but I've been driving by your office for years, and I see your ad in the paper, I'm gonna look, they kind of, it takes all of it before they'll come in.
Okay.
Sometimes,
So I know, Eric, you measure for a lot of things. Does this look like what your response rates or your breakdowns look like in your office?
No, we do better than that.
Perfect. He's a call source user. So what I see in the industry, and I've seen these numbers here, and this is an industry average that I've seen across the board. The 65% conversion, marketing yield. Does anybody know can define marketing yield? Do you know the marketing? Marketing yield is the actual response of qualified patient calls that are coming in from your marketing. Not just leads, but the actual marketing yield, to convert it from a phone call to an actual qualified patient call. So that's going to be typically 60%. So I'll backfill this a little bit with what we know an average day looks like, or an average month looks like for an audiology practice. So if you're getting 30 calls a month, at the end of the day, you're getting 5 sales. And that's coming off the market. And that's not your repeat and referral that are calling your landlines and things like that. This is just strictly your marketing. So I want to show you this. This is the difference between the industry and what we see as the industry. This means internal clients to call source. We see an increase from 60 to 75%, and this is based on transparency. This is you being able to see the halo effect. This is you being able to actually measure for that response rate. So if you could go from 60% to 75%, you think you'd be happy with that? The 79%, out of the roughly 5,000 practices or providers that we work with, 79% is our average. Does that look a little bit closer to your numbers? And I know you're doing some tracking down there, but are these numbers lining up?
Yeah.
Perfect. This is what it does to your overall. So you go from 5 sales to 8 sales. That's a big jump. And when you're looking at $3,000 on average, that's $9,000. So you're looking at $9,000 translates to a yearly, $108,000. I don't know if anybody likes Tesla, but that's a Tesla car right there. So this is all about planning. This is all about your strategy. This is about managing your marketing and your portfolio and making sure that you have the information to make you successful. That's what we're here for. To put it to another way, so if we work with you guys and we're successful, not if, when we're successful with you. Here's talk about 2 sides of the coin. Here's the other side of that coin. Another good question for you. I'm going to go around again. So, do you practice?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure we've already done some bad things here. So when you get phone calls and you set an appointment, there's a difference between setting an appointment and letting one go away. So what do you do? Do you have a follow-up program or any kind of a rehash program for patients that you don't book an appointment with?
Yes.
Okay.
We have somebody in the office that gets, as soon as possible, get the name, number, information.
And how quickly do you follow up with them?
Yes.
So a couple days, couple hours?
Oh, from when they call, if
Yeah.
they want to book an appointment? No, I'd have to ask Mary in our office. She does all of that.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know when she does it.
Is she your practice development person?
Yeah, she takes care of all of the recall, all of everything.
Does everybody have a practice development person inside their office? Yeah? And it's their job to go out and do community outreach and bring new business out and network and do things like that. Is a part of their job grabbing onto missed opportunities and following up with them? I've got two over here that are shaking their head. The reason why I ask is there's a big part of this industry that is being unaddressed, and we talk a lot about competitive nature inside the market, right? We have a client that's in Southern California in Valencia, if you're familiar, and this person had a HIS inside their office, and they had a falling out. Well, what did this HIS do? They walked out the door. They leased the office that was no further from me to the cameras. So you've got one practice and another practice with a very similar name. So if this practice picks up the phone and they don't convert that call into an appointment, that call goes to the people right across the street, right? So if you're not managing those missed opportunities, you're letting that go to somebody else. And if it's going to somebody else, that's not somebody you're able to help. And God forbid those people don't call your competitor, they call Costco because they had whatever kind of experience. The point being is I don't want to see anybody have an opportunity to go out the door. So if you're coming in, if we could follow the same numbers that we were taking a look at here, out of all the calls that are coming in, you're missing 5 appointments on average per month. That translates to just over $14,000, just shy of $15,000 per year, or per month, I'm sorry. That's a lot of money going away. Now I can tell you that if you follow up with somebody within 24 hours, you're most likely going to get about 15% of those people back in the door. 15% is a seemingly small number, but that's also a lot of people that you're able to help. So it's just just over $2,000 more in revenue. So we talk a lot about revenue. Revenue, we got into it to help, right? We want to help people. We want to help people hear again. We want to help them, give them the gift of hearing. We can't do that if you're not getting appointments, right? So let's look at this again. So if we look at, if we take that $2,100, it's $25,000 a year, in addition to what we were already talking about. That's $133,000. That's enough to open up another practice in another area, isn't it? So don't take it home with you. Expand your business. Help more people. At the end of the day, or the end of the year, you've gained 45 new patients. You do that over a period of 4 to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. You've got yourself a great patient base. All right. So we're talking about bringing people in, understand how it works, the call flow, the marketing. If I can ever instill anything, if I can instill anything with you guys before we walk away today, is actually develop a plan and a strategy to become more successful. Once you have that plan, how do you keep yourself number one? Number one in your marketplace, number one in this space as a whole. The only way to do that is to have visibility throughout the entire industry. So if you can see what you're doing and compare that to what others are doing in your area, in the country, and it absolutely positively gives you an extra edge. That's not something that most people have. I would say that, do you have an idea of what goes on in your market with other audiologists, other providers?
In terms of what marketing they're doing?
Marketing, business strategy, expansion, anything.
Most of our competition is big medical centers.
Okay?
So it's kind of a different category. There are some audiologists around. We see their marketing, but that's what we see.
Right. And usually those medical facilities have a huge marketing team that are sitting in some office in the hospital somewhere, right? But what they're doing, what's working for them.
Ads that they've received.
What's that?
Our patients bring in ads to show us that they've
Do they say, can you meet these prices? No?
They just ask us, what do you think of this? And then they usually go with what we recommend. Or they'll say, we're doing, we just thought you might be interested in seeing what your competitors are doing. Just give us the direct mail piece or whatever it is.
Right. So then you get to see what your competitors are doing in terms of marketing, but do you get to see what kind of strategies they're developing, what's working for them? Because you can see that direct mail piece, but as we were talking about, some people feel that direct mail doesn't work. So if they're dropping that, you might be able to pick up in the market and do some mail drops, pick up some of the business they're missing, right? Be a good strategy. But you'd be able to do that if you got to see what was working for them and what wasn't working for them, right? So that's the point, is being able to peel back the curtains and look inside the house as opposed to open the door, sit down on the couch, and look at all four walls and wonder what's going on outside, okay? Because we have the client base that we do and the partnerships that we have transparency and visibility behind the industry that most companies won't be able to see. So keeping you number one and keeping you competitive, we're always going to be able to measure for you and measure with you how to keep you successful and keep you that number one in the market space. Okay? So starting out and working with CallSource gets to, we understand what it's like, what we can provide and all these things. But getting you started is kind of tricky, right? We don't want to just get you going, set you up, and then let you loose and have no management with you guys whatsoever. We have a very well-laid path. We plan ourselves. I plan. My boss makes me do a plan every year. I have to be able to see what's going on and whether I'm being successful in my plan or not. But setting it up, starting it out, getting you implemented, setting you up with the right people, matching you up with our advisors, these are all really great ways to get you going. It's a crawl, walk, run, if I could say that correctly. But it's a well-laid plan. It works. It definitely works. And we've seen it work, and we've seen a lot of people be successful by working with us. Okay? So I just kind of open it up and let it open it up for questions. Yes?
A few years ago, we used CallSource just for one campaign, one manufacturer that set
Okay.
us up to use. And it was great in the sense we could listen, but I spent hours just listening to those phone calls. And I thought, I don't have time for all those hours to spend. And then we talked to CallSource because we don't do, manufacturer type marketing. They kind of said, you need some event to track the calls. So we couldn't really figure out how we were a fit with CallSource because we don't do those, call to action type things.
Well, even with the newspaper ads and the local print ads that you guys are doing, you're an absolute fit. So the one thing that you just touched on, and this is probably important for everybody, is listening to phone calls. I know that you don't have time in the day. I know most of everybody doesn't have that time in the day to listen to those phone calls. That's why we do it for you. Consider CallSource the silent partner that runs in the background. We'll listen to we'll analyze the calls for you. We'll give you back that finished product. Basically, we're going to polish everything up and give it right back to you. And that business advisor that we set you up with and line you up with is going to be your monthly partner. That's going to be your partner on a day-to-day basis. They're responsible for getting into the system and taking a look at the information and working with you firsthand, as opposed to you listening to phone calls, breaking them down, doing all these different things. You don't have time to do that. You should be working on and providing health care for these hearing impaired folks. We'll do that for you. So, and going back to the original question, are you a fit? Because you market, and because, how many practices do you guys have in your outfit?
We have two.
Two. Are they both full-time? Okay. Do you have an office manager that does it all? Are they both places?
We have an office manager in each office.
Okay, perfect. So for you, it would be able to help you remote. Gosh, I keep blinding myself with this light. It would be helpful for you as the owners and the people that are running the practice themselves to be able to remote manage both those locations. Plus, it's going to make your office manager's life that much easier. He or she can be more effective for you if they're not focusing on the minutia or the minute detail. If you have us do that, provide you the information, you guys can meet and execute on that information. You can develop those strategies and plans.
So, do you do training for front office staff to help them? Because I would be more interested in, or I would be very interested in some sort of front office training, like how do you handle the difficult phone calls or the people who ask the tough questions?
Can I?
Yeah, certainly.
We use CallSource, and Samara's here, and she's in charge of training our front office staff. So she listens to calls now. I think no, you don't do it anymore, but you did for a long time. CallSource does it all. Yeah, you used to do it for a while. And I used to do it for a while, and Jane, like you, it was the most horrible thing.
But I was curious, it's like I had to do it.
I
I know
hated
the
it.
numbers
It was
call, and I
awful.
wondered, I wanted to know how do you teach your front office employees to be more effective?
so that way you don't have to do all that yourself.
So Samara, how do you do and how does you?
So, CallSource basically has like a list of things, and they go through that, and that's how they score each, and there's different sections, like how they answer the phone, how they ask for the appointment, different, sections, and each section has like multiple questions that you're supposed to ask. So, when I notice like one employee or multiple employees are doing the same thing over and over again, then I set up a meeting and I just work with them personally on the tasks that they need to learn how to do. The biggest thing right now is like asking for the third part, like the patient to bring their significant other. So that's something I had like a whole meeting with all of the front office staff about how to ask, and ask them like what they're doing, and gave them suggestions on how to ask. And then I also reached out to Oticon, got some answers that way. So I do use Oticon a lot for the customer service if I don't know how to answer the question myself.
So, yeah.
So, hi everybody, I'm Tim. I work with Jeff at CallSource. One of the things that I think you might want to touch on, Jeff, is there's two components in CallSource when you look at it. One is for the business owner, and you make marketing decisions based off of what's working, what's not. That's one piece of it. So for example, if you look at a direct mail piece or a newspaper, if you run it and you say, wow, I spent X amount of dollars on this ad, is that good or bad? Well, unless you have context to it, you really don't know if it's good or bad. So one of the interesting parts of the owner program is that each component that we'll track, we're going to compare to the industry averages, to Theos average, we'll compare it to Oticon, rooftops, whatever you want to see, to say, if I'm spending $400 to make the phone ring each and every time, which actually the national average is about $427 to get a prospect to call, and costs $881 to get a new patient from your marketing efforts, these calls are really expensive, right? So how do we help retarget that marketing, bring that number down? But more importantly, Hop, to your point, how do we improve what we say on the phone? Because the low-lying fruit in every practice, even if you're converting at the highest percentage rate, is how do we train our front office staff to give that same experience each and every time they answer the phone? And how do we know that we're not going to listen to a call that makes their skin crawl? So, Jeff, if you could talk a little bit about telephone performance analysis, that
Perfect.
would be great. If everybody is aware what telephone performance analysis is, think about it like a report card for every call that ever comes into your practice that's the same every single time. So you have a benchmark to say, where do we need to improve? And then for each of those improvement areas we're talking about, you can either have coaching from CallSource via webinar, you can have live training led from CallSource, or you can learn from each other. We'll set you up for a train-the-trainer type program. Because not everybody learns the same way, so we have several different flavors of education. I'll leave it there, and Jeff, do you want to talk a little bit more about TPA and about our university and how that stuff works?
Tell us if you're ready.
Yeah, the business development team at Oticon provides front office training through one-on-one type coaching. I listen to lots of most of my customers use CallSource, so I listen to a lot of CallSource calls, and then provide either over the phone, over a webinar, or face-to-face. And then we do a monthly webinar, like Samara mentioned, the third party, inviting the third party to come. We did an entire webinar just on that topic of here's how you position it, here's how you deal with whatever objections you might get on the phone. So we do a lot of that stuff. And I just wanted to mention, to your point of spending all that time listening to the calls, and how much you hated doing that. I mean, I usually do it with a glass of wine in my hand, but what I found, for the customers that I work with, when they start recording their calls, whether it's through CallSource or another means, right away they're like, I have to know what they're saying, so they listen to it a lot. But then once you find out what the issues are and you start working on them, then it's more of a spot check audit process, or having CallSource monitor it. But it's usually just that upfront time where you really, you hear what they're saying the times you pass through, but to hear what the patient's saying and how they're responding, you kind of do that in the beginning, and then the time you spend on it, in my experience, tapers off a little bit. And then if you're working on something specific, like inviting the third party, then you start listening
So I'll elaborate a little bit more on what Samara was talking about in terms of the reporting and TPA, or sorry, I got right into call source jargon, telephone performance analysis. And for the sake of our conversation and not blowing out eardrums, I'll call it TPA. Our telephone performance analysis is a sampling of the overall call prospects that come in. What we'll do is, based on what we know to be very successful and best practices in the industry, we set it up in a yes-no format. So if a call comes in, our analysts will grab onto it, they'll listen to it, and they're going to break it down and very matter-of-factly tell you what's working, what's not working in that conversation. So when Samara was talking about that question, are you going to bring a significant other into the office, which is, I'm finding out more and more over the last couple of months that this is a point in the conversation that's not being addressed enough. And we're being able to pull reporting and being able to see that based on what's going on. And those are areas to focus on. But what this does is you can pull this report, and this ends up being a training platform for you. You can use this instead of developing a whole lot of things, or you work with a third party to do the direct training. But this empowers you to be effective in terms of developing content for your staff. What we've seen happen, instead of, and I say this quite a bit, instead of doing a blanket training and beating the heck out of your staff over everything in the script, you can take the certain segments that are actually important, the ones that are actually successful or unsuccessful, and train to those specific needs. I know that you're going to probably lose the attention span. If you sit down for an hour and a half with your staff and say, we're going to go over the script and you're going to learn it, you're going to learn it every word for word. However, if you sit back and you say, look, guys, we are not asking for email addresses. We're not asking if they're bringing significant others. That's when you need to really focus and explain the importance to them. Help them understand why these things are being said over the phone. Because 9 times out of 10, if you ask your front office staff what the importance is to bringing a significant other is, they may not be able to tell you that. So give them a little bit more context, a little bit more meaning behind what they're doing. It gives them a little bit more skin in the game. Is that helpful? You know, if you wanted to address on the training, the upcoming training, we can talk about that.
Sure. So I highly recommend taking any training you can get from the manufacturers, because it's obviously one of the best resources that we have in the hearing space. But there's 2 things that we have to think about. One is training. A successful training means you learn something. It's a one-time event. In most situations, it takes 21 times to create a new habit or to truly learn something at a skill development level. So a lot of times training goes in one ear out the other. So the other piece of that would be coaching. You need the tools in place to benchmark, to keep consistency, to create new habits for your front office staff. So you could spend time and energy training them, but as soon as you're done training them, they're going to go back to what they used to do. The goal of our program is not necessarily to be a training company. Our goal is to actually put in benchmark and foundation and consider us more of a performance management coaching company to keep it consistent and to keep doing what you've learned from Oticon, to keep learning what you brought to that table with the training, to keep it consistent. We did purchase a call coaching company in March. So in 2016, we will be releasing full front office staff training, one-on-one training, group training, all that kind of stuff. If that's a direction that you want to head. But I think the most important thing to keep in mind here is take advantage of any training you can get, in particular from manufacturers. But 2 is the coaching component, is how you're going to keep up with that after the training has happened. So whether it's us or somebody else, put metrics in place so you can say, okay, we did this, we spent the money, now how are we going to make sure that they're continuously doing what we invested in?
Is there any other questions?
I have a comment.
Yes.
So our business development manager, Terry Bell at Oticon, she kind of taught me this principle: inspect what you expect. If you expect your front office is doing X, Y, and Z every time the phone rings, her advice is to just continually inspect that. And when we were spending, when Samara was spending half of her day every day inspecting phone calls, we made the decision to hand over our call monitoring every single call over to CallSource. And I remember seeing Samara's excitement action yesterday, and that was kind of the reaction that she had when we made the decision to do that. And they do a great job. I think it's definitely in line with best practices, which is what Deus is all about. We've been very happy with the services. So if I could just put a plug in for Jeff and CallSource.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're not paying them, I promise. You had a question? Yes.
Any chance that you're gonna be working with other, Blueprint or Deer Farm or anything else?
Our partnership with the Cycle is exclusive. So actually glad you brought that up. How many here work with Cycle? Good majority of the room. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. We actually have a partnership with Cycle, and we've actually, from our feedback, from what our clients and their clients have asked us, because we have such a big market share between the two, they work with just about 6,000. We work with about 5,000. It made sense to pair up with Cycle. The feedback that we got was, is there any way that you guys can do an integrated reporting? How can you pair up with each other? So, and I'm going to give a plug to Tim. He spent last 2 years. This is a big project on his part, but we've created what I consider the holy grail of reporting between a system like Cycle and CallSource. So, yes.
I'm just curious, are you gonna be able to dump the information into Cycle, like the patient profile?
Yeah. So everything that flows through CallSource in terms of the front end is going to get put into this reporting site, independent reporting site. Everything that you input into Cycle is going to go. Do you want to? Okay. He's going to probably be able to speak to it better, but we're going to be able to marry the two bits of information to the point where you can plug in a caller's phone number, and it's going to bring up their information.
At what point is this going?
So it's finished right now. We're in beta test at the moment. What it actually does is you're going to have ad dollars tied to sales dollars. So if Margaret or Mary calls in from a direct mail piece, we know that she called in, what piece she called from, we know what location she went to, who the PCC that answered the call was, and we can even take it down to a SKU number for the part that she purchased. So that's done now. The reason why it's exclusive, besides it made sense as far as the footprints in the two companies, is we actually have a co-owned database that we've built together with co-owned IP. When you try to marry 5,500 unique clients together, it's not easy to do. So it's not just like an integration push or through API. It is truly a brand new company. It's a new database that's shared. But you're gonna have everything from cost per call to cost per patient and how that benchmarks against the industry. You're gonna have your front office staff conversion rates versus the industry, all the way down to the caregiver or provider, and then weighted average scores. Think about it like, I guess to sum it up, the goal of our dashboard is to put data in context for the owner of that practice to make quicker, better, and more informed decisions, not just off of their data, but how that benchmarks against the industry.
So is that an additional cost?
That will be an additional cost. It's about $50 a site for full-time site, and it's about, depending on between free and $25 a site for a part-time practice. We're still in beta right now, so we're figuring out how it's all gonna work.
All right, so, and so that means that for people who don't have Cycle, I mean, you need to switch out, yeah.
You have to be a CallSource Cycle client to have access to, because the two systems push into duplicate fields.
Do you have to be on the higher level of the platform in order to receive these services?
For CallSource's platform or for Cycle's? If you go back
Yes.
to the first screen real quick, Jeff, to answer that would be yes. We do have a discounted program for it. It's called the Owners or the Call Metric program. And again, think about your metric as you look at a sales funnel. You want to know how many calls did I generate, how many prospects did I do, bookable prospects. And did I
Is that
send
where you
people
wanna be?
in?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're those key metrics. You have to have the advanced product. Our Call Metric program is roughly $149 per site versus the $349 per site for the full results. It's light advising, it's light service-based, but the tech piece to get that would actually, you'd need it to finish the metrics. Similar things you'll see in the actual Cycle dashboard would look similar to this. What you're gonna get is trending. You're gonna get month-over-month comparison, year-over-year comparison, in real time. So it's not just if you pull up a report, how many calls did I get today? It's how did those call counts today or this month compare to last year, compared to forecasting for the future, seasonality, everything of that nature. So most of what you could be doing with the data is already done for you, so that you don't have to figure it out. You guys run budgets as far as budget versus actual forecasts and things of that nature. This system will do that on your behalf, but as opposed to taking it down to your EBIT, it's going to take it up to calls you should be looking for. We make tweaks to show you if you're ahead or behind as far as your call So it's a dashboard setup, so you're gonna have a marketing tab, you're gonna have an employee conversion tab, so you can see front office staff and also provider conversions. There's a sales tab, which is where you're gonna have your intake versus revenue and all that kind of stuff. That'll take into consideration walk-ins, repeat referral buyers,
And so
people
our
that
own
didn't
phone
come to
number
marketing.
would be included in that.
To track your own phone number, it's kind of touchy because we would have to actually have it on our system. Because the way tracking works as a whole, you place a number that someone calls, it comes through our system and we point it to you directly. So that's called, your direct number is a direct dial-in number or a DID number. If we take it out of your phone system and make it a remote call forwarding number, it loses dial tone, which means anything is related to being able to call out on it or anything else goes away. I don't recommend tracking your main line in that fashion. We get statistical relevance from tracking your marketing as well as recording calls. And it's not magic, so from the front office staff perspective, you say, hey, I'm gonna record every call you take, I'm gonna score you on it, and then I'm gonna compare you against everybody else, and we're gonna pay you on it. They get better. So it's pretty simple, and then when you have the elements behind it, it improves, but tracking your main line, there's a lot of issues around it.
Any other questions? Well, we got Jeff and Tim here. I want to thank you guys for coming. I think it was a terrific opportunity. Today's focus is really kind of, how do we do well? How do we improve our businesses? And I think culture, as I said earlier, is kind of a unique aspect in connecting the dots between the marketing spend and that effectiveness. We're oftentimes busy seeing the patients and don't have that transparency and that access, and I think it's a unique way to do that. So I want to thank them both for being here.